In David Jeremiah's book, the Book of Signs, we have come to the chapter on Babylon. Now, I've heard of many crazy prophetic things over the decades, all kinds of ideas about prophecy, which have all, let me say, failed, but people have come up with all kinds of unbelievable ideas on prophecy, Bible prophecy. And David Jeremiah here, he's come up with the idea that Babylon in prophecy, Revelation 17 and 18, is the original Babylon back in Iraq, which right now is just a bundle of stones. But Jeremiah, he's going to tell you that this Iraq Babylon will rise again to become the Babylon of Revelation 17 and 18. My friends, this is absolutely ridiculous. It's theology from planet Pluto, if not theology from another galaxy. Nothing could be further from the truth. Now, we're going to read quite a bit of what he says about Babylon here, and it's all true, the quotes that he gives in Revelation 17 and 18, because it is there. And so we'll start off. On his chapter of Babylon, page 45, he says, though Babylon no longer exists as a cultural and financial powerhouse, it has influenced the world in many ways that continue even today. It does. Babylon over there, a bunch of stones, and it still influences the world. In the first book of the Bible, we learn that Babylon was the site of the Tower of Babel. Yes, indeed it was. Man's first attempt to establish a world order devoid of God's influence. Genesis 11. In the last book of the Bible, we see that a revived Babylon will be the center of financial world order, and it will dominate the tribulation period. This Babylon over in Iraq, a bunch of stones, and it's going to have this kind of influence on the world? Come on now, we'd have to be looking at 100 years from now for that to happen. He goes on to say, why Babylon? What mystery lies dormant in this ancient fallen powerhouse that will elevate it again to a position of world dominance? Dr. Henry Morris explains, and he quotes now from Dr. Henry Morris, quote, Babylon is very near the geographical center of all the Earth's land mass. It is within the navigable distance of the Persian Gulf, and it is at the crossroads of the three great continents of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Thus, there is no more ideal location anywhere for the World Trade Center, a World Communication Center, a World Banking Center, a World Education Center, and especially a World Capital. And that's what this Morris guy wrote. This is ludicrous to think of all of these things that this Babylon, a pile of stones there in Iraq, will eventually be what Morris explains here. It's absolutely ridiculous, friends. Ridiculous. Babylon's rebirth, as Jeremiah goes on. The book of Revelation reveals that when the Antichrist seizes the reins of world power, I've said to you, there is no going to be such a thing as a world power. There is no nation or groups of nations that are in the end time going to rule the whole world. It just isn't going to happen. So he goes on to say, in any case, this Antichrist is supposed to rule the whole world government. His administration will be divided among the powers centers. Rome will be his political base. Well, that's interesting. He brings in Rome as a political base, Revelation 17. You read Revelation 17, and it's more like a religious base. Jerusalem, he says, will be his control center for religion. Okay, so he goes on to admit that indeed It will be the control center of religion. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 4, and he is correct there. This beast power that is to arise in Europe, indeed, the religious center will be Rome. And Jeremiah says, and Babylon will become his financial and economic hub. Revelation 18, no, it will not be. It will be indeed where Rome is, the resurrection of the seventh and final resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. Over on page 37, he says, to sum it up, look for Babylon to rise phoenix-like from its present obscurity to become the financial center of the world. It's garbage. It just is not so. Is not so at all. And all of the old Protestant Bible commentaries will explain Revelation 17 and 18 as it truly is. As it truly is Europe and Rome. Reasons for Babylon's destruction, he goes on to say on page 49. There will be reasons for its destruction. And he cried mightily with a loud voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, it's fallen. Revelation 18:2. Babylon will be destroyed because of her iniquity, he goes on to say. John writes, Babylon has become a dwelling place of demons, and a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. Spiritual iniquity. So it is, and so indeed will be Europe, and will be the city of Rome, wherein lies a great and mighty and ancient power that answers to these prophecies in Revelation 17 and 18. He says, under Babylon will be destroyed because of her influence. Well, there'll be great influence, yes. Revelation 18 verse 3. Be destroyed because of her infidelity. Revelation 18 verse 5 he quotes. Will be destroyed because of her insolence. Revelation 18:7 he quotes. Babylon will be destroyed because of her excuse me, because of her inhumanity. And he's quoting again from Revelation 18. It will have inhumanity indeed. He says here on page 51, the reality of Babylon's destruction. Therefore, her plagues will come in one day, her death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. Revelation 18 verse 8, that is true. And it will happen quickly at the end time. It goes on to say, and quote, then a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, thus with violence the great city Babylon shall be thrown down, and shall not be found any more. The sound of harpists, the musician, flutes, the trumpeters shall not be heard any more in her. No craftsman of any craft shall be found in her any more. And the sound of a millstone shall not be heard any more. The light of the lamp shall not be seen any more. And the voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall not be heard in her any more. Revelation indeed 18 verses 21 to 23. Indeed, it will be so. When this Babylon is thrown down, none of these things will be heard in her any more. And this great empire at the end time, which, my friends, is going to be the resurrected Holy Roman Empire in Europe, and the spiritual capital of Europe is Rome, with that great church that you should know has lived there for 2 centuries in the confines of Europe. And when it arises again as the last and seventh resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire, indeed it will arise, but it will only last a short while, and it indeed will be destroyed quickly and suddenly. And I've mentioned that kind of thing on my website and on my blog, how it will be destroyed and who will destroy it. And my blog, remember, is themeltdowncontinues.blogspot.com. blogspot.ca. Go on there and you will find studies that I've done in the last few weeks or so about this Babylon and what the Bible really says, and the beasts of Daniel and Revelation, putting them together, showing you how Revelation and Daniel fit together and the beasts that it talks about in those two books, and how you can put them together and figure out what it is talking about and who indeed will be the end-time beast power of the book of Revelation, with a false prophet and with a great mighty military machine. And you can know by putting those together, the beasts of Daniel and Revelation. It's on my blog. Just scroll back some, maybe 12, 13, 15 studies back, and you will find it all expounded to you in detail, the beasts of Daniel and Revelation. Jeremiah says, the reaction to Babylon's destruction. Well, he gives the monarchs will mourn. Revelation 18, 9 and 10. The merchants will mourn. Indeed, Revelation 18, verse 11 and 15 to 17. The mariners will mourn. Revelation 18, 17 to 19. And then he finishes by saying the rejoicing over Babylon's destruction. And he says, when Babylon is destroyed, the monarchs, the merchants, and the mariners of the world will mourn. But the apostles and the prophets in heaven will rejoice. Rejoice over her, O heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. She has been responsible for the killing, the sanctioning of the killing of many, many saints down through the centuries. It's in the history books. It's there if you take time to investigate and to read. She has been responsible for the death and the imprisonment and the torture of countless true saints of God down through the last 2,000 years. I guess we will rejoice when this great religious power that has indeed the city of Rome as its capital, and when it will indeed reign over the beast power of Europe, I guess we will rejoice when it is destroyed. Verse 55, our response to Babylon's destruction, and he goes into why we should rejoice on her destruction. He finishes chapter by saying, the world system is as precarious as the shifting tectonic plates beneath California, the tectonic plates beneath California. But God's promise never shifts. They remain unshakable and solid. We rightly grieve to see so many rushing headlong towards Babylon like lemmings to the sea. Yes, towards a religion that is the greatest so-called Christian religion on the earth. But it's right that we also celebrate the coming triumph of good over evil. I agree, true. Removing for all eternity this perennial enemy of God, and it has been 2,000 years of it. 6 resurrections of the Holy Roman Empire, the last one by Mussolini and into Second World War. Yes, God has inflicted so much misery, a system that has inflicted so much misery on God's people. This end time Babylon, my friends, is nowhere near the stones that lie in Iraq with the ancient Babylon. You want to take a look at some Bible Protestant commentaries in and concerning Revelation 17 and 18. Albert Barnes, Matthew Henry, Adam Clark, Jemison, Fawcett, and Brown. Those Bible commentaries will show you clearly that indeed the end-time Babylon is going to be a European resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. And if you want to get specific, it will be Babylon, Rome, the city of Rome, with its great religion that will unite with a military and political force in Europe to indeed be the last seventh resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire. And it will indeed be destroyed by God, and all of God's people will rejoice in her destruction.